Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Tabletop and Beyond. I am your host, Justin. I'm here with Jason, and we have special guest and returning guest, Josh Berman, a.k.a. Quarterpaint. Welcome back to the show, Josh.
Thank you. Good
to have you.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I'm saying this for the benefit of our listeners. If you're listening to the podcast, please feel free to continue to listen. However, if you want to get the full effect of today's topic, you should visit us at YouTube at youtube.com/tabletop and beyond. Visit us there because we are going to be pulling up some of Josh's work. And I can tell you this right now, my words, as good and as eloquent as they are, just can't describe the awesomeness that is Josh's painting. So as much as we try, you should see it with your own eyes. Am I right in saying that, Josh?
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely.
We'll get some people viewing the YouTube page today. So
that's right. Yeah, he's saying definitely, Justin. Your words just won't cut it. So, yeah. So, Josh, I was looking back at our schedule of episodes that we had. You were one of our first. I think you were like in the first top 10 of our episodes that we had back in August of 2020. So,
yeah.
I don't know about you, but a lot's kind of changed since then.
Yes. some big life changes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we are excited to talk about some stuff with you as you have made some significant advances in the hobby and personally and professionally, and we're excited to get into that. But before we do, as always, how was your Geek Week? So, Jason, let's start with you.
Oh, man, Geek Week. I got lost. I was actually I was on vacation this past week, but with my wife. But I'll say this. I went on vacation with a couple's friend, and we brought games, and we played Arkham Horror, the card game.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, the kind of campaign card game. We played through the first campaign, like the full acts, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and it was a fun ride. Difficult card game, but a lot of fun. But so that played a lot of games with that. But before that, since the topic today is more about painting, I did I'll hit what I did a week before. I actually fully printed my Slaves to Darkness army using the Lord of the Prince Unchained, and took it to the tabletop and played it. And
that's right.
And played it and had a lot of fun with it. Actually, I guess I could, since we're video now and not just
he beat up on me pretty good.
Yeah, it was fun. Here's one of my let's see if we can get this up really close to the camera. Maybe not really good, but here's one of the guys, sweet. Right? So that's a 3D printed. I used him to be a chaos. What was he?
He was a chaos warrior.
Yeah, chaos warrior. And there's a couple different ones like that. And then I've got like these little guys that was like the marauder on a mount, right?
That was a chaos knight, right?
Yeah, actually, this is a marauder, right? Because you see the size difference of the body. Okay. These little guys. They're it's hard to see, but they're smaller relative to the big guys you see there. Yeah, but so yeah, I mean, it was cool. It was like a $10 monthly subscription to get this giant army that I painted that I felt was a good aesthetic for Slaves to Darkness, and I printed them and brought them to the tabletop and played them. So it was a lot of fun. But it was a lot of fun to paint them too. I'm still toying with my paint scheme, but I mean, Slaves to Darkness can be difficult, but they can also be really easy, right? Just throw a bunch of black armor on, maybe a color in the chainmail, and you're good. But so that was it for my Geek.
So speaking of as a quality painter, Josh, do you ever really print 3D things, or like what? Do you print 3D models?
We're going to spoiler like future conversation, but.
Okay.
Almost everything I receive in like professionally now is most companies they're 3D printing. So, again, I'm getting really high quality 3D prints, before things maybe go into other forms of production. And some companies are switching just to 3D prints. So yeah, I'm working with 3D printed minis all the time now. Yeah.
That's awesome. And yeah, that was a bit of a spoiler, but we'll get into that. So that's really, really interesting. So you're kind of like painting prototypes and stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's very good. Very good.
Yeah, there's a lot
Josh, go ahead.
There's a lot of really, I was just going to say, there's a lot of really good, if you're good at 3D printing or if you just enjoy it, there's there's some really good sculptors out there that put their stuff out on like My Mini Factory, or even like Game Body, I think is a big one. Some really high quality sculpts. Printing it is a challenge itself if you're a hobbyist printer to get that good quality, but there's a lot of good options out there. I'm happy to hear that you're getting a lot of 3D printed stuff. That's really cool.
Yeah,
it's definitely the future of things for sure. That like some of the big companies, there's some resistance, but I think that's where it probably is all headed. Privateer Press, who does War Machine, has now committed that everything that they sell is now just going to be a 3D printed product.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah. So with their new version of War Machine, it's everything that, even internationally, they're like contracting with international printers and stuff like that, but everything is 3D printed. So yeah, it's interesting.
I'd be super interested to see the business model on that.
Yeah.
They're still selling their minis, right? They're selling 3D printed minis versus cast minis.
Correct.
Yeah. I wonder if they'll ever move to like letting people buy the STLs and print them themselves. Huh. Curious thought.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Well, Josh, how was your Geek Week?
Yeah, well, it'd be a little cheating, right, to say that I just like painted a bunch of minis, right? So I did start the Vox Machina animated series on Amazon. I've been a Critical Role fan for a while, and so that was that's always a fun ride. It's a little comedic, but in a lot of some good fun. I don't have a set like stable D&D group, so that kind of like watching that kind of stuff, or watching their YouTube channel, it kind of scratches the itch for some D&D that I miss out on. So
yeah, you ever seen the Gamers Darkness Rising?
No.
Okay, you got to look it up. It's an old it's a movie from like probably the mid 2000s.
Okay,
but it is everyone who calls himself a role player has to have watched this movie once. It's a really funny comedy.
That's great.
A bunch of friends who play role-playing games got together and made a movie. It's good stuff.
That's great.
I won't spoil it, but go see it.
I don't think I've seen it, Jason.
Yeah, it used to be. I don't think it's on Netflix anymore. It's one of those you might have to just buy it on Vudu or something, But yeah, you got to see it. And when you because it's a movie made by gamers as a tribute for people who play role-playing games, so it's a pretty comedic adventure.
That's
nice. Nice. For my Geek Week, I've got two things. So I was struggling mightily over the last week and a half to figure out what kind of warband I want to take for Warcry at Adepticon coming up. And Jason knows well that I usually play everything, at least a couple of times. And we're usually testing out different warbands to see what they're like and then talk about it on the podcast. And I'm usually playing against his ogres or flesh eater courts or something like that, which is a good stress test for a new warband. But because I'm playing a little bit of everything, I haven't gone I've gone an inch deep and a mile wide. So thinking about how to build a winning warband for Adepticon, man, I was struggling. I was like, do I go death and do Graveguard stuff? Do I go destruction? I've got an order list. I mean, I've got a whole bunch of things rattling around my head. And I decided that I wanted to, I kind of settled on Bone Splitters. So it's funny because I had warbands on my table that I am painting, but I said, push them aside. Let's start working on it. So I got 20 Bone Splitter orcs done. And, well, not done. I got them built, and I got their skin. It's kind of hard to see. Yeah, it's going to be hard to see. But I got their skin done pretty much.
I approve of the orc choice. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got their skin done, which I'm really happy with. And it was a pretty simple thing. It was kind of a process that I sort of adapted from Zach Cascagoon's Iron Jaws. So,
Sure.
I kind of did an Iron Rack skin, base coat, and then I did a Bugman's Glow kind of wash that I kind of mopped off a little bit. So just got into the recesses. Then I hit it with the airbrush with the Athonium Camo Shade wash, and so it didn't pool, right? It just tinted everything.
Right.
And then I hit it with another dry brush of Iron Rack Skin again, and then I went over it with the Beal Tan Green to make it so basically I got like, after the Athonian Camel Shade, it was kind of this brownish, if you can see, and then after I did the Athonian or the Beal Tan Green, then I got the green skin that I was looking for with the Bone Splitter. So I got all their skin done pretty much, which I'm happy with. I just need to go in and put some tattoos on them and gussy up their faces a little bit more and get all their weapons and clothes and stuff done. But as far as like models go, like these Bone Splitters are like fun to paint. I'm having a good time with them. Like they're pretty easy, and there's surprisingly quite a bit you can do with them, like that make it your own type of thing. So yeah, I don't feel locked into any kind of specific recipe that I have to do with them. You know, like if I got a Stormcast, like you kind of feel like, oh, they got armor and you got, you know, I don't know. Like I know a lot of people do a lot of different things, but it's hard to get away from certain tropes sometimes with certain models. But I feel more free with the Bone Splitters, I think.
So. Yeah, you can play around a little. You know, they're all barefoot too, right? You could like, you could do like a little bit of like mud or splatter or blood down on the feet. You know, like they've been running through the battlefield or something like that. You know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a page out of your book, Josh, with that what was it, the pale skinned orcs that you did a while ago for Zach Caskagoon, actually, and I'm gonna get some of that blood for the blood god and put a little bit of mineral spirits in there. And what I think I might do is put a little bit on one of my crappy brushes and then like shoot the airbrush through it to get that nice splatter effect of blood on it. But because that mineral spirits, it kind of makes it a little bit finer spray, right? Because it kind of breaks it down a little bit into smaller droplets that seem a little bit more realistic, I guess, at that scale.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
So
I would practice on a couple of things before you hit an actual
probably
model.
A good idea. That's probably a good idea. I'll probably get blood for the blood god all over my desk. So you know, it's like a murder scene, a model murder scene. So yeah. But I'm kind of interested to see how it goes and how it turns out and stuff like that. So it'll be fun. Whoa,
very cool.
I'm kind of freaking out. And the last thing I wanted to talk about real quick. I don't know why my
Justin is in rave mode currently.
What's so funny? I think that my camera is synced up with the LED light that I have on, so it's like because it's not blinking in my room, you know. Anyway, the other thing I want to talk about is I had mentioned this. I've been watching The Last of Us. I'm up to episode 3, right? That had just come out, and I decided to start playing the video game along with the show. So I've played the video game up to the end of episode 1 to see kind of like what the differences are and how it was. And I'm pleased to say that episode 1 was pretty darn close. Like there's a couple of subtle differences. And I think that the subtle differences were more for gameplay than they were for narrative, you know, like, so for example, they had the folks kind of sneaking out of the city. I don't think that's too much of a spoiler, right? They had some folks sneaking out of the city, and like the game, you spent a lot of time sneaking out of the city, and it was to kind of teach you the mechanics of stealth and combat and quiet combat and all that stuff that you needed to learn, but that you didn't really need to learn in watching the show, right? You didn't need to develop that muscle memory watching the show. So, but I was pleased for episode 1. We'll see how episode 2 goes. And
my wife said that she read she watches a lot of and follows a lot of entertainment, like weekly stuff. She heard that the 3rd episode of The Last of Us is one of the best episodes that's been on TV on any TV series in like a really long time. Like people are rating it as one of the best filmed TV episodes of all time.
It was good. It was a
This is the 3rd episode. Yep. The 3rd episode. Yep. Oh yeah. So you have seen it?
I have seen it.
Of course you have. You binge whatever they have available.
That's right. That's right.
Sleep is not a thing for you.
I mean, I want to also talk about how I'm working my way through like seasons of Fargo, right? That I'm almost done with that series that I started a couple weeks ago.
You're starting to get at least 3 hours of sleep this week, right?
That's right, exactly, at least 3. So,
we talked. About this.
But that's been pretty good. I did read, by the way, this last week. I did read The Road by Cormac McCarthy to kind of like.
That's dark. Okay.
It was kind of heavy. Have you read it, Josh?
It was a long time ago. Yeah, but yeah. Oh, rave mode.
I know.
Reactivate.
Yeah, I'm in rave mode again. For our listeners, my lights keep flickering along with the camera, so I don't know what I need to do to fix that. But anyway, but yeah, it was pretty heavy, but I thought it was so good though, as far as the book goes. Like, it was pretty powerful. I can see where they kind of took thematically from from that book for The Last of Us, but I think the book is significantly different enough, right, that it kind of stands on its own, or the game stands on its own.
For sure.
But yeah, it was a good book. Anyway, yeah, great Geek Week, guys. A lot of video watching action and painting, of course, right, which is great. Let's hit the geek news, which I forgot to put up our thing, but here we go. Geek news. So we only have a couple of bits of geek news. Jason, you probably have the first one that has to do with convention and badges and things like that.
Oh yeah, I actually don't have our script up right now, but I'm pretty sure you're talking about Gen Con.
Yes, sir.
Yep, Gen Con the 29th Gen Con badges went on sale. So excited, right, for that. And also, I think we know this year our masks. I don't think masks are going to be a thing at Gen Con this year. This will be the first year since everyone's been dealing with COVID that there will not be masks at the Gen Con convention. So if that's something that's been holding you back, this will be the year that we'd love to see you back there to play games with us and all. I know that we did the Warcry tournament at Gen Con last year, which was a lot of fun. That was how we went out with 1.0 with a bang at the Gen Con, right?
Yep.
And then rolled into 2.0 right afterwards. So that was good. But I'm excited as always. I know the next one on our plate, as you mentioned, is Adepticon, but Gen Con is always one that's there. In fact, funny, my wife knows that Gen Con is such a big part of my life that when my family schedules family reunions, when my side of the family schedules family reunions, she makes a point to tell them Jason won't be there because Gen Con is over that time. And so nice. I tell my family every year, they're like, yeah, we're going to do it this week. I'm like, I won't be there. And like, all right. So they pushed it a day. It's like, all right, I won't be there for the first day. Why? It's the last day of Gen Con.
That's right.
But even my wife's on board. Right? My wife's on board with that. Yeah. Good times though. But yeah, I'm excited. Yeah. So hopefully you guys are too.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'll be interesting to see how big Gen Con is this year, because if Adepticon showed us anything, like a lot of the events, all the painting events were like sold out in the first hour. Mm-hmm. All of the like Warcry was sold out in 2 hours, which is crazy because like it was like 40 spots, right? Like, and last year they had 17 people. So Warcry was sold out in like 2 hours. A bunch of the other ones, the big ones, like a lot of the Kill Team stuff was sold out within the first day. And so I have a feeling that this is going to be a big year for conventions. Adepticon, Gen Con, Nova Opens, like some of these other big conventions that you've got. It's going to be big. People are wanting to kind of get back out there. And I think now that we've all said, okay, well, we've learned how to live with COVID, and we've got vaccinations. We don't need masks. We can kind of do our thing. It's going to be no holds barred, it seems like, in terms of attendance. So it'll be exciting.
Do we know what attendance was like at LVO this year?
Oh man, it was bumping. This was the biggest Age of Sigmar event ever. There was like almost 300 people that played in the championship event, which
that's great.
Crazy. I think 170 played when you and I went in 2020. Mm-hmm. So it was over double. No, not quite over double, almost double.
Well, yeah, and we went. It was It was right before the world really started to pay attention to COVID.
We were in Las Vegas, and we started seeing people walking around with masks. And we're like, why are they doing that? Like, this is just this weird thing that's going on in, like, China, you know? It's, like, literally, like, out of one of those pandemic movies, right? Like, oh, that's just a virus over in that weird Asian country, you know? And next thing you know, like, 2 weeks later, it's, like, everywhere, so.
Yeah.
You know, not just for the gaming side, but for the sort of the painting side, there's some pretty big turnout. Like, you know, I'm friends with a bunch of international guys, and, like, there was the World Model Expo and Monte San Savino, and like huge turnouts internationally for some of the painting competitions. And then Nova this year too had the most painting entries they had ever in the history of the convention so far. So, you know, I think everyone's eager to get back in person.
For sure. Absolutely, yeah. I think for sure. I'm excited to see to play at Adepticon. And I'm excited to just see all the people that start to show back up at these conventions that have kind of been holding off for a little bit.
Yeah. The other piece of news, we are going to put the nail in the coffin of the OGL. And you know, we're happy to do this. Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast have announced that they will be moving the next generation, the 1.1 license, OGL, to a Creative Commons license, basically. So there's actually not going to be a 1.1. It's just going to be a Creative Commons license for the system reference document. And they will not be getting rid of the 1.0A license. So companies like Paizo and Cobalt Press that have built their business according to the 1.0A license can continue to publish on it. And then everybody else that is using the systems reference documents, it's just a Creative Commons license that you just need to cite basically as you're doing it. So pretty interesting work, pretty interesting development. I think that we just need, like, I think that the devil's always in the details. Like, we kind of need to see, like, if you're going to use the system reference document, which is basically like the player's handbook, if you're going to use that in some of your products, I don't know, like, what the citation requirements are or like what you need to do. I don't think that we've seen that yet. We just know that it's Creative Commons. So if you're just using it for fun, or if you're using it out there to put it out free, it's a free kind of like fair use. I think that you can use, but if it's commercial, I don't think we've seen how that works quite yet. Maybe you just end up using the 1.0A license that they have for commercial use. So it'll be interesting to see kind of like how it totally shakes out. But I think right now we're in a place where it's done. We don't need to talk about the OGL anymore. However, I will say that the fallout has continued. It's kind of interesting. The companies that we mentioned before, Paizo, Cobalt Press, even Chaosium, and some of these other companies, they're still moving forward with their own open gaming license called the ORC. And I think it's I can't remember what the ORC stands for, but it's like open reference. I can't remember, but anyway, I should probably look that up. But yeah, anyway, they're still
stands for not the OGL.
Not the OGL, exactly. Yeah. So they're still moving forward with it. They're just like, yeah, it's nice that you kind of walk that back. It doesn't matter. We've already, we're going down a path that we don't ever have to worry about this being a thing again. And it was interesting because just the chatter on Twitter, you've seen a lot of people that have sort of walked back from their positions of like, I hate Wizards of the Coast, I'm never going to buy anything from them again, to like, oh, okay, guys, they listen to us, we can go back now. There's almost like a anti-returning sentiment out there, which is like, how dare you support them? They're still evil, right? And it's the backlash kind of just continues to ripple. And I just, it's gamers sometimes, right? Gamer rage. So kind of interesting. Something that might be related, but it's hard to tell if it's totally related. But Hasbro has announced that they will be cutting 15% of their workforce in 2023. And the rumor is that the president and chief operations officer, Eric Nyman, is among those who will be cut. So kind of interesting that announcement's coming right now. I think you're seeing a lot of companies though, like the fact that they're cutting 15% doesn't shock me at all, because you just saw that like Microsoft just laid off like 15 to 20% of their workforce, right?
Yeah.
Or I think it was about 15%. You're seeing other companies doing, Amazon's doing the same thing. Like you're seeing job cuts across the board right now. So it doesn't shock me that Hasbro's doing this, but the fact that the president and chief operations officers on the cutting block, I think raises some eyebrows there.
I would stand by that. That's rumor. Companies don't announce that our CEO might be on the chopping block.
Right.
That's not how they operate. Yeah. They either get asked to resign and that's what you hear, or it's a rumor. That the CEO being a part of one, I'm not saying it's not a rumor, but it's absolutely rumor right now. It's just not how companies work.
Right. So that's a big fat asterisk. Rumors are.
Yeah.
Right. So
but enough of that.
Yep. So that'll do it for our geek news. If you've got something interesting that you'd like to share, leave us a comment. Let us know. Give us a heads up, and we'd be happy to mention it. And we'll let the world know that you brought it to our attention. So it's great like that. So if there's nothing else, then let's move to our main topic, which is really you, Josh. You are our main topic today. As we mentioned before, you are Josh Berman. You are known as Quarterpaint, both on YouTube and Instagram and everywhere else. I don't know. Are you on Twitter? I haven't seen you on Twitter very much.
Haven't done Twitter. No.
Yeah, it's probably for the best.
Yeah.
Probably for the best. I see you a lot on Instagram, and for an artist, I think that's what matters most, obviously, right?
Sure.
But you've had a lot of big development since you talked to us last. Let's start with the major one. What happened to you at the end of 2022, my friend?
So I had been working towards this for a while, but I moved to full-time professionally miniature painting in November of 2022. I'm a freelance artist now, and that's a big change. I had been working in the the nonprofit world for the last 10 years, and kind of made the leap to job profession now is artist, which is still pretty wild. It's only been about 3 months now officially full time, but I was juggling the professional work with my my day job for most of last year, and it's I have a very supportive wife, and thankfully made some good connections, and there's a lot of work to be done too.
So what made you what was your thought process that was like, what, I'm ready to actually try to do this full time?
I did a lot of like early prep work. So like I obviously had to make sure that it was like financially feasible. Me and my wife, we live in New York. We're on Long Island, and it's not a cheap cost of living out here. And so just making sure that I could earn enough. I was sort of developing some connections with some companies that I'm working with now, and had to sort of ensure that there was enough work. And then really the advice that I got from the other guys that I knew working professionally was do it for a while, like work in the space and take on some jobs before you sort of dive headlong into it, and see what you're committing to. Because, going from just painting as something that is maybe your downtime or your hobby, and then making it your job is obviously like a different experience. That you have different demands and expectations, and you may not always be painting something that like you're super ecstatic about or something like that. So, it was a good 6 or 7 months that I was doing that along with the day job, and it got to a point where I was confident that there was enough work. I could earn enough. I had sort of, set aside some financial cushions for myself, and it was like, all right, it's kind of now or never, Yeah.
So, when you say, you made connections to make sure there's enough work, where's the bulk of your work coming from? Is it companies that are asking you to paint box art or prototype stuff, or is it commissions that you're getting from private people or classes that you're teaching? I know there's kind of multiple streams of revenue that some artists online can do, right? They'll do the Twitch stream thing, and then they'll go do classes. They'll do commissions for different things. So where's the bulk of your work coming in from?
So right now, I agree with you. First of all, I'm slowly kind of working to kind of diversify my income streams as well. But really, my main sources are actually working it's freelance work, but I'm basically doing studio work for 2 companies. So it's Privateer Press is the bulk of it. They have a few games, but mainly their War Machine line. They release their Mach 4 of War Machine. So they've been keeping me very busy. And then I've also been working with Atomic Mass, who does they do Marvel Crisis Protocol, and they do the Star Wars Legion and a couple of other tabletop games. So I've been doing work for both of them for the last year, and they're really the bulk of it. I've also been doing some private online coaching as far as painting, but continue to kind of explore my options as far as where things come from. But it's not any sort of private commissions. It's really all studio based work right now.
Yeah, Atomic Mass Games is pumping out the models. I mean, they've got Star Wars Shatterpoint that's coming out in July, right? And they keep dropping armies for Legion, and all those Mandalorians just came out not too long ago, and the Empire Army just came out, and of course, Marvel Crisis Protocol, you turn around and there's a new set of expansion packs that you can get for that.
Oh yeah.
They got the Marvel United that I think that's Atomic Mass Games that has Marvel United as well. I could be wrong about that.
Is Marvel? I don't know if is Marvel United. That's not the chibi based ones, right? Or is that because that's Simon Games, I think. So.
Oh, Marvel, you're right. I think that is Simon. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Yeah. That's right. But yeah. Anyway, but they're kind of all. I mean, Atomic Mass Games, getting in with them. That's a good steady line of work. So, how long were you double dipping essentially before you decided to make the full-time transition?
It was the early last year. So I over the last 2 years, I've made a lot of connections sort of in the painting world. So I was kind of you guys were talking about things that happened during COVID. Yeah. So I was, I've made a lot of connections via Instagram, but it got to a point where I knew a couple of guys, and I think there were a lot of people sort of just eager for some social connection. So I was kind of a founding member of this sort of mini painting collective, so to speak. I
like the sound of that.
And so it was a lot of talented people, up and coming artists and stuff like that. And it got to a point that we have our sort of a Discord channel, and over the last 2 years, it's been once or twice a week we'll meet up and kind of have paint sessions where you're in this very solitary sort of hobby. You can kind of spend some time with some other people.
Go ahead. Sorry, I was gonna say, is this the one that Devin Meyer was telling me about? Is he part of this mini painting collective?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Meyer? Okay, I think he has something similar then.
Okay,
because he was telling me, he's like, yeah, we've got this private Discord where the painters go, and I'm like, okay, well, this sounds exclusive, so.
Yeah, we started small, but it's got I got some fancy names in it now. But it was actually, so I got to, over the last 2 years got to spend a lot of time with some of these guys, and one of the guys who's like a pretty prolific like American painter who I got to spend time with was Eric Swinson. And Eric was really sort of kind of instrumental in helping me sort of get connected to these companies. He was doing a lot, like the majority of the studio work for Privateer Press before he kind of like brought me into the fold. And so it's been kind of like one of those, circuitous paths, but it's been pretty amazing that, like, if it weren't for this sort of like connections made on Instagram leading to this group to kind of meeting these people and then making these sort of professional connections, I'm not sure all of this would have happened in the last 2 years. So, yeah.
It's really cool. It's like a special thing to meet, to find a group of people that you can relate to. And, that's kind of why we do this podcast, right? A bunch of us that get together and just talk about stuff that we like, that means something to us. Right. And try to share that with other people. So it's cool that you were able to get together and kind of have that interaction. Because like you said, painting can be a very solitary thing, put on the Netflix or something, or the YouTube music or whatever you do. Right. And paint for, next thing you know, 4 hours. But, it's cool to share it with people somehow.
Exactly. Yeah. And so one of the, we'll look at some pictures after, but like, one of the things that sort of started happening out of this group was that we decided that we were going to do like a miniature painting Secret Santa, where
cool.
where like artists would create a piece for another artist and sort of send it, sort of thing. And so it's a tradition that's sort of like carried on over the last couple of years. But that's been a fun thing where, you get to know some people and kind of like, do something or make something just for that person. So that's been a nice touch too.
Yeah, that's very cool. Now, you said that you have a very supportive wife, and being married men ourselves, we definitely know how important that is, to have a supportive wife, to be able to kind of pursue some of your passions, especially as a business venture that may not, on the surface, pay the bills. Right. I mean, that must have been kind of an intense conversation that you had with her about, hey, I'm thinking about doing this full time, but maybe it wasn't. I don't know how like you were able to go about convincing your wife that we can do this. Was it after you started getting basically like money for the stuff you're doing and like, look at the bank accounts, like we'll be fine? Or was it like, hey, we're going to need to do this with a prayer in our hearts and a leap of faith, basically?
See, my wife is the emotional, impulsive one, and I'm more of the planner.
So your wife was like, yeah, go do it. And you were like, whoa.
She saw me so stressed from those other jobs. She's like, I would come home. She's like, when are you quitting your job? Like,
that's so funny.
So she was my like biggest supporter to make this leap. And it really was me that put the brakes on for like 6 months to just make sure that, like, we wouldn't be homeless.
It's kind of hard to paint if you're homeless.
Yes.
I mean, the good news is that you can always use a piece of your cardboard for the oil paints to draw some of that oil, right? The linseed oil out of it. But, now, still on the topic of painting as a business. One of the things that I struggle with, that I mean, I would love to make my hobbies a business sometimes, but I have heard a lot of times, and I have felt a lot of times, like, I don't know that I want to make my hobby my job, because I don't want to make my hobby feel like work.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever feel that you struggle with that? Does it ever feel like work to you? Do you ever feel like you're being kind of maybe pigeonholed into doing stuff that you don't love, and so that feels like work?
It is definitely a challenging balance, but I've spent a lot of time sort of thinking about that. Like I've taken steps where like I like intentionally block out time for like personal work. Like that was something that obviously, like when I was doing the day job and also the professional work, it was a real struggle to like do anything that like was like my stuff, anything that like I intentionally wanted to do. But when I sort of like was able to sort of free up a little bit more space, like I take the time to sort of like intentionally leave space for personal projects. You know, I think I may be still a little bit in the like sort of pink cloud a little bit too, if I'm going to be honest. That. Just the fact that I can set my own schedule. I'm just working off some deadlines, and that it's sort of like 10 years of working a high stress sort of like day job and going to this where I'm in my home studio. I'm like it provides a level of like comfort and luxury that sort of balances out anything that might be potentially stressful.
Yeah,
I really think the only like the most challenging part of it so far, as far as like job, is just sort of like meeting the demands of the people that I'm painting for. That like there's some feedback and some tough requests and some things, but then there's also opportunities for them to like kind of let me be creative too, which has been kind of nice too. So so far I'm just sort of embracing it. It's been like a really positive change, and I'm still a little bit in like, I can't believe I'm doing this.
Yeah,
this is my job now, kind of thing.
That's great. That's great. It's been a positive thing for you, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. I'll be interested to see like if when the honeymoon period kind of wears off a little bit.
Like, I'm going to check back in with you in about
6 months, a year, like we'll see.
Sure,
but I'll be interested to kind of see once that wears off, like what you do to kind of keep yourself motivated, or and again, like a big part of motivation is making sure you don't live on the streets, right? That's step one. So but like I love painting a lot of different things. I may not go all in and say like this is going to be a display quality piece, but I like painting a lot of different things because I can just look at it and say, how do I want to do this one thing? You know what I mean? And not feel like I have to do the batch painting of 100 minis at the same thing. Cause I did that with my night haunt when I was getting ready for Age of Sigmar stuff. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know that I want to paint another 120 models of the same model, cause that like is such a creative killer.
Dude, that's why I went to ogres after Flesh Eater Courts. I was like, I don't want to paint another ghoul for the rest of my life. I'm gonna have an army with 5 models on the table.
Nice.
That's it.
I like that strategy.
So,
but I mean,
go ahead.
Like I'm someone, with the variety that comes with like professional painting, and like I'm someone that loves, at least for myself, like personal growth or seeing growth in things. And so, like that is something, especially in my painting, that sort of like keeps up my own energy, and sort of like my trajectory is like when I see myself improving. And so that is one thing about like taking this on professionally, is like it has pushed me outside of some comfort spaces. It has also like, there's just something to be said about like doing the reps, basically. Like you are using creative skills and muscles over and over again, and so you find avenues to do things better, faster, and and sort of kind of like unlock some things. And that part of it sort of really excites me, is just the fact that like I can put in the hours and the time, and that like that's only going to offer some like further improvement and growth in myself, for myself.
It's funny, I had a friend over the other day who had never painted before, and he was asking like, hey, can you kind of teach me how to paint a little bit? And I don't know that I'm qualified to teach anybody how to paint, but he came over and I said, okay, great. Let's start with the base coats because you've never done this before, like ever. Let's just do clean base coats.
Sure.
Let's do the pants, let's do the shirt, let's do the helmet, just clean base coats. And we can kind of go from there, Yep. And he got to a point where he's like, how does this look? And it was kind of, all over the place. And I'm like, you know what? You're doing great. Just what you're going to want to do is like, do this, do this, do this. And he's like, how did you do that so fast? And I just was thinking like, I don't know, like, I don't like, and I don't like, it was like, not even like a second thought of like how I was doing it. And I realized like that was hours and hours and hours of experience that just like translated into just whipping that out, and learning brush strokes, learning paint, consistency, learning, moving your darker stuff into the shadows, moving your lighter stuff, and it was just kind of like all sort of coming out. And he's just like, wow, like, I can't wait till I get there. And I'm just thinking in my head, I was like, I wish I could like give you that knowledge. Like, I wish that I could just transplant it from my brain to yours so that you knew how to do that. But it's like such an experiential hobby. Like, you just have to put in the reps to do it over and over and over again. You have to fail over and over and over again and just, do it again and again. And so, yeah, it was kind of funny. And I can imagine what you said, where you're putting in the reps over and over again. So the next time that you work on something that's your own, that would normally take a 300-hour like display, I don't know how long it takes you to do your display models, but let's just say like 300 hours. Maybe it doesn't take you nearly that long because you've put in the reps to get it to where you want to be like the first or second time, So, and you know how to approach it, right? You know the techniques that you need to use. So, exactly. But speaking of your work, the reps and all that stuff, why don't we pull up some of your stuff that you have done recently?
Sure.
And go through it because let's show, not tell, right? Like, you got some good stuff. So I am pulling up, for our listeners out there, I'm pulling up some of Josh's art here. And give me 1 second. I'm going to get it to a place where we can sort of zoom in. Oops, not that one. Okay.
So while he's doing that, what is this a picture of? What are we looking at?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is a piece. All right, so we talked about the Secret Santa exchange. This was a custom piece done for, I don't know if do you guys know Chris Surrey? Okay, so you should. I'll just tell you, you definitely should. Chris Surrey is
How do you spell his last name?
Suhre. He's, at Adepticon many years, like he's back when they had Crystal Brush, he's won multiple Crystal Brush awards. He's an incredible storyteller through miniatures. He creates these incredible dioramas and story pieces. He's just really prolific. And on top of it, he's like a pediatrician and just this incredible artist. So like, he's just a cool guy. He's a great guy. And he's a big fan of dragons. And so I had gotten Chris for My Secret Santa. And he's also a big fan of this artist, Johan Eckerkans. I'm not sure, and another one worth looking up. He does a lot of incredible art. He's done these like Norse mythology books. He just released like a dragon book. And there was a piece of his that sort of inspired me for this. I actually sculpted this piece too.
What? Like from scratch?
Yes. There's a hand sculpted piece as well. So, this was a really fun one. This was like at the beginning of 2022, kind of rounded it out. And it was like, something that like really, kind of like pulled all my skill sets together. That's something that
that is incredible.
Thank you.
I thought this was like not printed, but at least
so it really is a one of a kind.
Yes.
So was this all out of just like milliput, basically?
Yeah, like it has like some core of some like some of the polymer clays, and but then using a mix of like milliput and some green stuff and things like that. But yeah.
So that's your awesome. Sculpting skills are like on point, dude. Because like I struggle when I do sculpting and my fingerprints are all in it and my balls aren't round and my circles or like my little like long tubey things are always look like an earthworm, so
like, Justin, man, really talking amazing. About your balls not being round and your long tubey things, and let's move on.
Listen, this is a family podcast, Jason.
Right? Hey.
Yeah, no, sculpting is not necessarily something that like comes naturally, but it's something that I really, it's a skill set that I want to push on and sort of, like I said, like I like sort of personal growth stuff. So like I like want to something that I want to be better at. So that's why I sort of like took on this project. I was like, I'm going to try to make something unique. Like it, they're compare it to like a well-crafted like 3D sculptor or like someone that is working professionally in the sculpting world. It is pretty clunky, but it's something that like I feel sort of like proud of in where it's at, and it's something that like it's something when I kind of find the room and the time for in the future, I'm hoping that I can like it's a skill set that I'm hoping to grow. Like I would love to dedicate some time to learning ZBrush to work on some 3D sculpting to be able to 3D print some of my own work or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this was go ahead.
Is there like when you were sculpting this and painting this, did you have a story behind the model in mind, or just kind of thematically you knew kind of where you wanted to go with it?
Yeah, so I used the like Chris Loves Dragons. I had that sort of like art piece about this sort of like dragon wizard kind of thing, and that was kind of like my direction. Like I took some thematic elements from that like art piece that like the character had kind of this orb and this sort of like dramatic beard and stuff like that, but definitely kind of took it in my own direction with some of like the magic and like some of the space theme and kind of like like just pushing the piece towards like my work. I'm not someone, I'm a lot of like display miniature artists, they work in a way that like they sort of like have a clear vision and work towards it. I'm kind of a bit of an intuitive artist when it comes to my own pieces, where like I will work to a certain space and then sort of refine it or change it and kind of it's a kind of like an ever flowing kind of process. And so this was something that kind of evolved. It wasn't something that just like I knew it was going to look like this in the end,
So I took a mini painting class this last Nova Open from Devin Marr. You may know him on Instagram as Cutthroat Cure.
Okay.
If you've heard, if you've heard that, So he does a lot of bust painting, right? And he's won some crystal brushes and stuff like that. And anyway, he one of his thing was like, what's the story that this miniature is telling you? Like that will push you to know what you need to be painting, because that'll be the story in your mind as you go along, right? So it's interesting that you kind of started out with a theme and then just kind of let it mold you as you went along too, and kind of ended up to where you were happy with it. And it's very cool. Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good. And I think the next picture that we have is essentially this. Oh no, hold on. It's kind of a close-up. It's a head-on picture of it, which is cool because you've got like the left side of its face is being blasted by the light source, and so the right side is in shadow. But then you play with the cloak being kind of the galaxy part, right? So almost like a night sky type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's very cool.
I was really trying to play with sort of like ambience and light and just sort of playing into the idea that I could go a little nuts with the idea that this is just a fantastical character. It can just have a little bit of like magic. It doesn't necessarily have to like, follow the rules of light physics or anything like that,
Now, did you, just for those of us who are in awe by your talent here, did you ever have to go back and be like, yeah, that's way too many stars, I need to fix that part? Or did you just get the stars perfect the first time?
No, and like that's the thing is like I was not afraid to sort of like seek out some advice. Like, this was a multi-month project, so I was able to sort of like tap into some of the people that I knew through that paint group and sort of get some advice, that like I remember, like asking, where I was with some of the things on it. And one person said like, it'd be nice if you could like punch up the brightness of like a couple of individual stars so it feels like they pull forward a little bit or something like that, and there, I'm not afraid to like look for some of that feedback and to modify and stuff like that. And so, there was definitely some conversations on the piece for sure with the people I trust.
Yeah, looks great, man.
Thanks.
What a cool project, because not only are you doing kind of like the Secret Santa, right, but you're also like collaborating. Not collaborating, but you are working with other people to get feedback on how to make it better. So it's like an edifying process as well as like a gift thing that you're doing, right? So what a cool project. What a very cool project. So, all right, let's look at this next one. So this is what looks to be kind of like a female elf ranger, maybe.
This is a professional piece. So this is like one of the famous characters in Privateer Press in their War Machine universe. Arius. I don't know her full story, but this was just a recent, a recent professional piece that I like doing. Like, she was a fun character that, I didn't mind the sort of static pose. It gave me an opportunity to sort of like really kind of focus in on
now, when you do professional pieces, do they just want, I guess you probably have a lot of options, but do they just want pictures so they can use it as like marketing material? Do they want you to send the model back, or can you keep it, or what? How does it?
So in the case with both the companies that I'm doing the studio work for, at least Privateer Press, I'm doing both pictures for them and sending the models back to them. So, they're paying me for photo and video work is along with the
video work,
actual painting the models too. So
interesting. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
so like one of the challenging parts of like this miniature was like when I was painting it, and they, I got to the final point, and then they were like, oh, we forgot to tell you she has tattoos. It was like, okay. So that was like a nerve-wracking evening of just like, all right, let's not screw up all my hard work and paint in some tattoos.
I mean, like, if you were to paint tattoos on anything, isn't it usually after you've done all the skin and stuff like that anyway? That's what always freaks me out about tattoos or any kind of like freehand.
I know.
I'm gonna fudge this up, Yeah.
But it's fine on like clothing, but skin, like I'd be afraid of like having to redo that entire belly.
Right.
That's true. So I'm looking at this piece. She has obviously a lot of leather, right? As most fantasy miniatures will have a lot of leather. Do you find that there are types of items, I guess you would say, that you really feel like an artist should have to master, like silver, gold, leather, because those seem to be like accoutrements on everything. basically. You'll find leather on Barbarians and Warhammer. You'll find it on Privateer Press. You'll find leather pretty much everywhere. So is that like, what are some of the things that you feel like an artist should like learn to master?
Well, your lesson with your friend actually, I think is stronger than like maybe like a material or something like that. I think definition or like clarity in the piece matters a lot more than the miniature like material per se. Like that if you can make sure that like the elements of the miniature are readable when you hold it up to your face, and when you put it on a tabletop, you view it from a distance, like it's going to make a sort of a statement. I know a lot of people that like, they kind of fall into the trap where like they feel like, okay, well, if I use this color, and this color, it's going to make a nice leather. It could, but like if like you could actually, use some like random purples and greens and blues and still come up with a really nice leather too. But like if like if you're really spending some time to sort of like define the features, like really where like edges meet and like where elements of the miniature change, and making sure that those are clear and readable, like that really kind of elevates your miniature in general.
Yeah, I just painted a squad of orc commandos. I know you love orcs, right? So the Kill Team Orc Commandos. And one of the things that I really pulled away from that was the importance of the black lining as a marker of transition, right? Because I had green skin, and then oftentimes they had gloves on, or or the corners of their shirts or things like that. And I was like, man, I'm just not getting the the definite transition between these two things that I really want. And the minute that I started doing some of that black lining, just to kind of make that as like stark, like this is one thing and this is the other thing, that's when things started to pop a little bit more, and you felt like it was a much more of a definition, on those things. So.
Yeah, it's such a simple idea, but like if you can think about like where the elements meet, and if it's sort of like you said, the black lining, if it's clearly defined, and that's why Games Workshop does so much edge highlighting, right? It's like that those are where their elements sort of meet, and like they really want that definition. So like that those two sort of like techniques are like sort of quick go-tos for finding that definition. So
yeah, very good. Very interesting.
Cool. Because I mean, that's a big part in the professional pieces that we go through them, is like, I have to, make sure that these are other people's product, right? So I have to really show off what
the different parts.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so moving on to this next picture, it's very. I'm assuming this is War Machine here.
Yes, yeah, these were some of the like earliest pieces I did for Privateer Press that they they take their pieces to a bunch of like conventions as well, and these were right around when they announced their their new edition of the game. And this was kind of like I feel like these were like my introduction to the community behind War Machine and painting for them and stuff like that. And yeah, these were exciting because like they at first were kind of like funneling like a lot of one of their armies my way as far as painting. And these kind of red ones are the Kador or Kador. They're kind of like I'd say like like a little like Russian themed a little bit. They got kind of like that that kind of vibe, the Winter Soldier kind of thing going on. This was like it was one of those first early like professional projects that was like, oh, I can do this. This was a fun one.
Yeah, I'm looking at this, and it's definitely, I want to be using the word comrade whenever I whenever I would move it around. Looking at this, your reds on those machines are awesome. Like, I just love the different kind of shades that you have on the panels, right, to kind of give it a little bit of definition. there. It's so good right there. But do you find that you like working in certain colors more than others? Like if you had to sit down and you're like, crap, I hate painting purple, or like you're like, I love green because I know you love orcs, right? So I love green, or whatever it is. Like, do you like certain colors other than others, or find some more difficult to work with than others?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't. I use blue in like as sort of a utility color, but isn't something that like I use frequently as like sort of like a prominent color in like at least in personal work. And so like when I had to use it with, I think I even have a picture in there of like they have an army called Signar, which is like this like really intense blue, and I think I struggled at first to get like some of the contrast and some of the like value intensity that I wanted out of blue, that definitely like, I think my comfort range is, like you said, like in the greens and reds and places that live in the sort of orc realm. But, I, like I said to you guys before, that like, this has forced me to sort of like move outside of a lot of comfort zones and sort of try a lot of new stuff,
By the way, the way that you did the texture on the inside of that cloak is like on point. I mean, that is so amazing. It looks like I could reach out and it'd be like feel like dryer lint to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like the fact that you did that, I assume that was a lot of stippling.
Yeah, exactly. It was just like, like looking for some of that textural difference, right? Like, just trying to make that cloak feel soft against the armor and stuff like that.
It's very cool. Very, very cool. All right, let's take a look. So here is one. Again, I'm assuming this is from Privateer Press. It looks like a kind of a lich warrior, maybe a dark elf warrior. From what I'm looking at.
They have a new force that they came out with called the Dusk, which are essentially like undead elves. This was
the best kind of elf right there.
Yeah.
Well, to Jason, it's the dead elf.
The dead elf's the best kind of. I hate elves. No.
This was an exciting project, though. Like they basically handed me something that basically was like a new product for them, and gave me some concept art and said like, make this look cool. And that was a real honor to sort of like trust in that, like I could put something together. Like this was the first painted miniature of their Dusk force for them. So this sort of sets the tone for the rest of that army and how it gets painted. And so it was really something that like I was sort of excited to do. It was like a real kind of like commitment as like a professional that like, all right, like I'm setting a sort of a trend for this company, it's not as dramatic, but like, who's the guy that got to like paint the first ultramarine or something like that, right? So this was a cool piece, and I'm actually, I can't show it, but I'm working on another Dusk piece right now. So
could you imagine trying to walk around in all of that armur?
Oh god, yeah.
I know. It's a good thing they're undead. They don't feel the
pain, I know,
probably, right? Yeah. So I've got two questions. One, you kind of mentioned like doing the first piece. Do they give you like the whole army because they want to see like one of every like model that they've made of that range painted that they can show off, or do you just start with one and then they've got other artists to kind of follow suit, or how does that work?
Well, I'm sure I will probably eventually get one of everything.
Okay.
They don't send it sort of like all in one shot. I don't have like full insight into like how they develop their sort of like release schedule, but I definitely get it in piecemeal, and they don't have a lot of like artists. Like, so I'm still technically like a freelancer for them. So like, and I'm, I took over a lot of the work that Eric Swinson was doing. Like he was really like their primary painter, and he's such a successful guy that like his entire year this year is already booked for commission work and box arts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So he actually has taken some steps back from doing work for Privateer and basically allowed me to step forward and basically take most of their studio work, you know. So
I know Matt DiPietro, he was doing a lot of work with Privateer. In fact, I think he was their lead artist for a while before he left them and kind of went private.
Yep.
And
yeah, there's
I don't know if
a long line of like pretty big names that worked for Privateer. Like they had an in-house painting team for a long time.
Yeah.
But then I you know, it got to a point where I guess it wasn't feasible for them, and then they transitioned to using like freelance artists, and that's where I'm at. But it's still cool to be part of like the you know, the lineup, I guess, that did work for them. So
now, I'm noticing that they're like all your metals here are pretty much exclusively non-metallic metal. Do you use metallic paints like on any of your models that you do, or do you like just like, nah, I'm so used to doing NMM now that I'm just gonna basically go with that because that's my art style?
yeah, I mean, so at least for Privateer, I don't, you know, so especially with the new you know, new edition with their work, Eric sort of set the trend and the sort of like art style and sort of like I sort of like picked up the torch with that. But Atomic Mass, for example, like all of their work, they want the true metal metallics on all of their pieces. And so actually it has been a learning experience to kind of like go backwards, essentially, where what felt like going backwards, where like I'm going from this real comfort zone in non-metal metallic work and having to go back to this and like, how do I do this again? You know, like
that's too funny. Yeah.
You know, and so that's been a, you know, I'm kind of like reteaching myself and relearning that and kind of finding a comfort zone in that again. But yeah, I definitely a lot more comfortable with the non-metallic metal stuff. You know, it just affords a level of control that I really like.
Which is so funny because I think for the most part, like myself included, like doing true, you know, like there's kind of phases that you go through. You're like, okay, I'm just going to throw this, you know, lead belcher silver on there. Good to go. And you're like, maybe I need to make it pop a little bit. So I'll do a Stormhost silver on the edges. Right. And then you're like, oh, okay, that's still not great. Like it's better. But so then you start to shade some of the, you know, pieces a little bit more. And then I know I took a class from Vince Venturella about how to like make your TMM pop a little bit more. So, you know, you're mixing inks in with your actual metallic paints to get some of that like non-metallic metal look with your true metallics, right?
Exactly.
And since doing that, now I'm kind of like, okay, I think I might be able to take on the non-metallic metal. But I'm just like, there's a fear inside of me, Josh, that I am just going to take way too long and screw it up. And I'm just like, let me just do the true metallic metal because it's faster. But I think that that's a cop out. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you.
It depends on your goals, right? Though, like, yes, TMM like is the thing for like if you want to get like a really quality sort of like effective result and get it to tabletop, like that is definitely the way to go. But like, you know, like obviously like in these kind of pieces, my goal is to like highlight certain elements or like focus the viewer in certain parts of the miniature. And like, if I can control exactly where a highlight goes or where the brightest thing is, it kind of makes you look at certain things on the miniature. So like, I need that level of control. And like, that's like where the comfort comes from, you know?
Isn't that the real, like, one of the main reasons to do non-metallic metals is because you can control where the light focuses on the metal.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's, you know, because like it really affords you like the opportunity, like, you know, like punch out the parts that like really, you know, you want to have that shine and that focus.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Cool.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, so our next one is looks like a chariot with what looks to be a very heavily armored gladiator style and robot horses. Maybe are they robot horses or just heavily armored ones?
I think just heavily armored. You know, like they have kind of like the War Machine thing has like kind of this like steampunky kind of aesthetic to it a little bit. Like they meld a lot of stuff, but yeah, this was one of the first pieces I did for this force. Like I said, I feel like you can see it in this picture. Like the blues are not as maybe like as rich as like the reds on like the Kador piece or something like that. Like, you know, the blue fought me a little bit on this piece, you know.
It's still awesome. I mean, like if you look at the, you know, the horse's head, you've got that great, like, you know, shadow up near where each plate overlaps, and then it kind of pulls out to a highlight near the edges, you know, which gives that definition there. And like on the hind leg of that, you know, the foremost horse right there, I like the shadow that kind of like pushes towards the back of his plate there on the blue. So I think, I mean, it looks amazing. Like, you know, it looks great. But I can see what you mean, where blue might not be like your strongest color right now, because like the red just had so much definition to it, you know. So, but I'm sure that as time goes on, we're going to see the blues just become magnificent for you. So that's awesome. Now, here's a question that I have for you. Do you, so this is Privateer Press, so are you like contracted to use P3 paints when you do this, or do you need to, I mean, if you can't answer that, don't answer, right? But like, do you have to use their paints, or do you kind of use your own stuff too?
No, I you know, I'm not brand loyal at all with my painting. So yeah, you know,
I wasn't sure, if they're like, well, since you're painting our stuff, you need to use our paints so that you can show people that it can be done with our paints. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if, like, well, Games Workshop has an in-house painting team, and they use, you know, Citadel paints in their demos for their models.
Though I've heard a few things that like their in-house team prefers, especially for their true metal metallics, like some other brands, you know,
Vallejo.
Yeah, you know, maybe not using their GW whites and stuff like that, you know. So yeah,
the GW whites are like literally the worst paint I've ever used in my life. Like, it's so bad, bad. But and you don't have to say they're bad. I will say it, Josh. So. So the best white, for the record, the best white that I have found out there is the Chimera white.
That is a good white.
Oh my gosh, I love that thing. Like, I can thin that down. It doesn't get chalky like a lot of the other ones, and it doesn't come out clumpy, you know. So the Chimera paints overall, like, are hands down my favorite. And I've got a bunch of Scale 75 and a bunch of Citadel and some Vallejo, but the Chimera, like, that's a paint that just speaks to me.
My favorite white is the primer that I put on the model. And then I make sure I don't mess it up if I want to have white on the model.
Actually, that's a good tactic. Like, if you're going to have white, to start with the white first and then just work around it. Yeah. That's kind of what I did with this piece, actually. Is like all the white is done before all the blues and stuff like that. So, you know, like, it's just a challenging color that, like, you know, you're not going to want to do it over another color. So,
yeah, very cool. All right, so this next one is a tank. Is this is related to sort of that Russian force, right? The Kadar, I think you said they were called them.
Yeah,
same
exactly.
symbol on them. Now, my question for you, like, this is a really cool tank. I have seen you really lean into like some weathering and all of that stuff. Do they have like? Do they basically say like, listen, Josh, we know that you can go like A+, but we want C level work. You know?
Yeah, I mean, everything is like everything is, you know, they call it like studio level, right? Like, you know, that like you know, like the goal is not necessarily like, it should be a beautiful thing, but it's not about my artistry. It's about their miniature, right? You know, so So I had to sort of like find a balance, like, snuck a little like dust and chipping and like little, scratching and a couple of other things in there. But like, I couldn't go full bore, like my instinct was, I mean, this thing looks like it's this little like chunky tractor that should be like driving through some like World War I mud filled, battlefield or something like that.
Yeah, so, I love the tracks themselves, but I love the area right by the probably the Army symbol, where the red and the black kind of meet. And you've got that really strong like rusty weathering look by the bolts. Yeah, that's great.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I think about this because these are all the same colors that you used in your orc buggy that you did on YouTube like a long time ago, and I mean, an orc buggy, you weathered the holy living heck out of that thing, right? And made it grimy and gave it its like desert base and all that stuff, right? And so seeing this one versus that one, I think is very interesting because like I can tell like this is a professional job and that was a personal job, and like that's okay because I think you made an interesting point. This is about the model, not about your artistry, right? And that's really the defining factor.
Yeah, so. And the part about what I like about working for privateers, like they are a pretty trusting, group in the sense that like they can kind of hand something over to me and know that like I'm gonna make it look good, and like they like have been really sort of like open to the sort of aesthetic that like I've sort of brought to their pieces and stuff like that, and that like it does afford some level of sort of creativity, like it isn't really like super narrow or tightly controlled like that, like they have a general idea of what they want, and I have some room to play a little bit. So
how big is this model if you were going to like use your fingers and show us on the camera?
This one's like pretty chunky. This one's like, this one's like a, it was a big chunk of resin,
Yeah. Have you ever submitted a piece and they'd be like, yeah, no, do it again?
No, not to that extent. Like they'll note something that like, like, oh, this little element feels off, or this highlight like feels too distracting, or like I mentioned, like, oh, by the way, we forgot she has tattoos,
Yeah.
But it has not been like a full repaint or something like that.
Okay. I assume they probably give you some concept art to go with it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they I guess like they have a concept artist do some work prior to even them being 3D sculpted.
Yeah.
So like I can reference some of that, and that has like some color like direction and in what they're what they've sort of settled on like what things generally should look like,
and like an army theme too, right? Like I imagine like this one's red, you kind of get that Russian vibe. I'd like to point out, I don't know if you can see my cursor on the screen, this screw that is in the engine, to our normal eye, you're like, okay, that's no big deal. That's just a normal screw. To their size, think of how big that screwdriver must be to install that. Like it's huge, right?
They need another screwdriver tank to unscrew.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah. Funny. All right, so I think the next one that we have here. Yeah. This is I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is not a Privateer Press job.
No. This is some personal work. You said you wanted some orcs, right? So.
I mean, we got to have orcs with you. So yeah, this is an org pain boy, or is that what they're called?
Something like that. Yeah, like the pain boss or pain boy or something like that that they released not that long ago.
Yeah, it looks painful just looking at it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So he's got a claw for one arm, right? He's got a squig coming off of what looks like a hook.
You can see where his leg was tore off, so he could put the cybernetic leg on it.
Yeah, exactly. He did some surgery on himself.
Yeah. Very good. So, the thing that I love about your orcs, Josh, is that they have so much color variation for being a green skin.
Mm-hmm.
And I've watched a ton of your videos, of course, and I've tried to replicate some of them, and I come up usually very short. But one of the things that you say a lot of times is in the stretchy parts of their skin, go with more of a fleshy color, right? Like where things are stretched out, and that kind of gives some definition in those areas. Can you walk through like kind of why you would do that? I mean, I kind of mentioned it, but like why there and why a fleshy color, not like a lighter green or something like that?
I mean, like in general, like I said, like contrast and definition is like what you're sort of like looking for, and so like just using sort of color in general, like green is like sits on the opposite side of like the reds, on like the color wheel, right? So that they're complementary colors. So like using colors that sort of like fall in these sort of like red, pink, kind of peachy kind of tones are going to like push your greens further. Like your green, like if you bump that against your green is going to look more green, like that. Color is relative, that like you can place something next to a color and really change what it looks like. And so so that's something that I really loved doing, is like finding these colors that sort of like complemented the greens and like sort of brought some life to the orcs too. Like I think us as just humans in general, like when we see sort of something look like kind of flushed or like red, like it just sort of like indicates to our lizard brain that something is like alive. And so like adding some tonality of like red and some of those pinks into the elements of orcs, I personally felt like, oh, that kind of like adds a little bit of life to them. So like you can see like where you said like where the cybernetic leg meets his like knee, like I wanted it to be this sort of like irritated, like kind of like fleshy sort of connection, right? So it was like, you gotta kind of like lean into those other colors. And so it like also I feel like it sort of exaggerates then the greens around it, so
yeah, definitely looks inflamed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's and I think that's one of I think the last time you were on we talked about styles and kind of finding your style, and one of the things that we mentioned is that like I can go onto Instagram and look at a picture and know that that's a Quarterpaint orc, right? And I think it's really because of your contrast that you do with those greens, with the purples and reds, and more peaches, and that really just makes those greens pop so much more. And it's interesting because you look at the top of this orc's head, and you've got a dark green and a very light green right there. But you go down a little bit on his face, and you can see in the nose some of those flesh tones a little bit more, and then very prominent on a little bit on the lip, upper lip, but that's very prominent on the chin and bottom lip, and just kind of gives that like what it does is it draws my eyes to his mouth, right? And then I see the rest of his face, and then I look at the rest of him like, oh my gosh,
Yeah, so you're kind of like hitting on the points. Like the idea was like, the face is really like the primary focus on the piece, and wanted to sort of like pull it in there, but like want to make sure that like you're eventually like you're moving around the piece to sort of like key points and stuff like that, and that's kind of like what the kind of stuff that I think about like when I'm trying to like do this kind of stuff. This piece actually was one of the ones that I submitted into the Nova competition that you mentioned. It ended up getting a gold in the small scale category for Masters, which was a good time.
Dude, that's amazing. You got gold in the Masters?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can't be humble about that, because that's like there's some big name dudes in that.
Sure. Yeah. No, it was that it was like I said, it was a big turnout this year. It's funny, most of the big names I kind of know them. Like, Eric was judging this year, and I had just spent the last like 2 years hanging out with him, but they were a tough judging crew, actually. Like they scrutinized like the work, like I think they did a good job. And it was fun to participate. I didn't necessarily paint this piece for the competition. Actually, I didn't like paint any of the pieces that I submitted like specifically for the competition. It was more of just an opportunity to sort of like participate and kind of be there and kind of like, support the show, and then just like kind of get used to the competitive side of like painting too. Like I'm kind of new to that realm. So it's something that I sort of like want to like get comfortable with, that you're gonna present something that you've spent, like you said, like 100 hours on for judgment by another group of people. It's not always the most comfortable feeling.
Well, good job. Congratulations.
Josh, totally. Do you hear that, Jason? Josh totally just casually won a crystal brush.
I know.
Basically.
Well, he was
very polite. I'll just very polite. It's kind of nice
to the competition. Yeah.
I mean, I got a gold. I didn't get like best in show or anything like, like.
Okay.
You're like, I'm gonna try this competition thing out.
Right? Exactly. Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's very cool. Very, very cool. All right, so let's talk about this orc. Is this another one you submitted for? There's this orc, and then we have. I mean, this is a little bit bigger.
Yeah, so there's a little story here. So this was the very first miniature that I sculpted myself. So this was another one that like it was like my first foray into it, and I was like, I had a lot of fun with this. It was like the little storytelling. I felt like you never saw like in like ancient or kind of like old orc. So I wanted this like, this kind of battle hardened, gnarled kind of guy. I liked the character so much. I ended up asking a guy, he goes by Mr. Model Orc on Instagram. He's like a 3D sculptor, and he's really into orcs too, and has drawn a lot of inspiration like from my work. So he ended up 3D sculpting the character again. So like that other piece, yeah, he ended up like, and you can see what a professional can do, right? And so like he ended up 3D sculpting the piece and doing some 3D printing for me, and I was able to like, a few months later, sort of like recreate the piece in like more of a display level kind of quality. And I got to enter this into a couple of competitions too. I have, this guy has kind of like a soft spot in my heart. Yeah,
there's some sentiment. Jason, okay, so professionally like 3D sculpted, like, do you see a difference? Like, slight for me.
Yeah, there's still, both of them are pretty great models.
Dude, like,
I love the beard on this guy. Awesome. I love the beard. I love the age. Like, I think this one that you sculpted captures the age.
I do too.
Of the best of the two.
Yeah.
I think mine has some of like the derpy qualities of like the old Games Workshop miniatures, like the orc face is a little bit, that classic orc, kind of style. Whereas the resculpt is like a little more modern, a little,
he looks a little more grizzled.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. The resculpt, he looks like he's still doing his 50 push-ups a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the orc version of the bad guy on Avatar.
There you go. Yeah, I can see it now. Yep.
Yeah.
Great.
So dude, that's amazing.
Do you own the 3D sculpt for this, or did it? Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's a great model, man. I know lots of people probably love to paint that.
Yeah, the agreement was with him that I wouldn't sell it, but I could use it for a course. I could use it for students, and things like that. So that might be in the hopper in the future. Is
cool.
You might get a one-off kind of piece if you come to a course or something like that.
It's a special piece then.
There's so many things that you could do with this on a course, right? You could work leather. You could work non-metallic metal. You could work skin. You could work, there's so many things that you could do in a course that would be pretty awesome on this model. So
definitely excited about this one.
Yeah, super cool. All right, so this guy right here, I assume is another privateer press, right?
Yep, I just threw it in there. Again, like I said, like that. This was one of those forces that, like, I feel like I've sort of gotten to kind of like put my stamp on a little bit, and I threw it in there because, like, I knew, Justin, you would probably find this interesting. Is like something that I've been sort of like toying with as like sort of like a finishing technique is actually using some watercolor in some of like the lighter colors. So like if you see in like her robes, like
or
like
a robe down here.
Exactly, down there on her like lower half, like some of that blue and some of that like warm color is sort of like accentuated by like using some watercolors at the sort of the end. Yeah,
I like the
that
cool.
Is very cool.
Yeah, I like the coolness, like temperature cool that is in that bottom robe there.
Thanks. Yeah. It's a challenging scheme because they want a lot of white on the piece, right? But like, how do you define like something to read as white, but in essence, it read differently than other whites on a piece? Like you have to find avenues to sort of like define whites, and so it's like finding cool and warm whites, and what's crazy is like the metal in her armor and stuff like that's sort of like a white metal is actually kind of like a green, it's really pale, but it's green, really, and so it's like like I have to sort of like find clever ways to kind of like really pull out that difference between the elements.
Yeah, dude, all right, look, Justin, look at the blade of the gun she's holding up. You can see the reflection of the metal of the gun in the blade.
Right there?
Right there. Yeah. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, it's
a little subtle
cool.
touch there. It's a little subtle touch there. Yeah.
And I see the green like in the armor like a lot down here on the foot, you know?
There you go.
And you can see it a little bit in the shading right here. But what's interesting is that it's complementary enough of like the blue. I don't know. I guess is that called the Nagalus, right? Or color where it's like next to the color on the wheel or something like that.
Yep.
So it does, like you're kind of, it feels like you're reflecting like maybe this blue down here a little bit, So I think it's cool.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't necessarily like at first glance read as green because it, like how it's sort of like placed against, like I said, like some of those other colors. So but this was it's awesome. A fun project.
All right, so the last picture that we have to talk about is, I think, an interesting one because I saw the work in progress on this on your Instagram. If I'm not mistaken, you went on a retreat to start working on this with a buddy, right?
Yes. So, one of the perks of like that painting group is like I've made some legitimate friends through it, and so one of the guys he lives out in Pennsylvania, so he's like at least in driving distance, and we've met up at he's got like this family cabin in Pennsylvania, and like you spend a couple of days hiking, painting, and eating some food. It's a pretty good time. So this was like I threw this in there because this is like my one personal piece so far for 2023. It was the first like quote unquote personal piece that I've done in a while since like doing a lot of the professional work, and it was a lot of fun. You know, it was like really, personally, it felt like kind of like a little step up for myself too. Like I did it in, it was like 2.5 days or so. You know, we kind of spent up there, and it was we ended up painting the same exact miniature, which was a really fun exercise where it was like you could watch another artist on how they approach a piece and how they sort of render the forms, or how they're going to kind of creatively tackle some of the problems. It gets you, you know, you can kind of bounce some ideas off each other, and it was you know, a really fun exercise. It was something it was really invigorating per se, creatively.
Were these cuts on the model, or is that something you just did on the nose?
They were subtly sculpted in. The guy that sculpted this, I think he's Spanish. You know, I think he's a game designer, but like on the side, he does 3D sculpting. He does a lot of these busts, and they're really character filled. Like they're just like these odd little characters that like have a ton of like little fun little details, and so it was super fun to paint.
Jason, look at these eyes.
Yeah, I was thinking those probably what your eyes look like after you finish binging a TV series.
Yeah, probably
2 hours of sleep.
That's true. The bags and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm probably
it's really awesome. Another example of what you were saying, right? Like clearly define, maybe not clearly define, but denote where the differences of transition on the model are. Like you can see the bags versus the cheek, right?
Yeah.
There's a clear change there, a transition.
Exactly. Like that plane of the cheek is defined from the bags and the eyes. And that's exactly how I think about it, is like, you know, like if you can kind of define those forms like broadly, like you look for the big forms, like, you know, like his forehead's a good example. Like that is like a broad space that needs to be defined. But then you have to also define the smaller elements within that space too, you know, and that's like when it really starts to read. It's like you start to understand the shapes and like how people view it.
I love the way you did the eyebrows, right? How it's like shaded here, because it is almost like an anti-highlight in a sense, because his forehead is so bright and this is dark. It still draws my eyes into his eyes. You know, it like makes his eyeballs pop a little bit more. It makes the bag, you know, the reddish in the bag stand out a little bit more because it is kind of darker here, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, the first thing when you look at this thing, the first thing you see is probably the nose stands out to me.
Sure.
But it's not necessarily the forehead second, it's the eyes, right? Like those, like my eyes go from the nose to his eyes. And like I said, it's almost like an anti-highlight, an opposite because of the contrast there, you know, that I think looks really great. So really cool colors too. You don't see this green too often in a lot of things.
Yeah. It was just it was a piece that I sort of settled on, that like I knew I wanted this sort of like strong, like warm, cool kind of contrast to happen, and kind of just sort of leaned into that. And you know, it sort of fell together like really nicely. And what and I guess I would encourage this for other people that want to improve, is like what's nice about working with another artist is like, I think even where I'm at, like, you know, he was able to push me outside of my comfort zone. So like, you know, I found myself feeling really good about the face of this piece, but then when it came to like the like little vest and the fur and the jacket and that other stuff, I was getting a little lazy, or like I was getting a little tentative. Like I was like, I'm not gonna do too much. I'm just gonna let the face kind of like be the primary thing. And he was like, no, dude, just, you know, like go for it. Like, you know, like, so I tried doing some like non-metallic metal in there, and like trying to like push some of the contrast and some of the texture, and like I'm really glad that I did. You know, it was like it made for a stronger piece. So
yeah,
it looks awesome. Great.
Very good, very good. All right, so what's next for Josh Berman, aka Quarterpaint? What's what is next? What's coming up in 2023 that's going to be significant for you?
Well, I mean, you guys were talking about Adepticon, so I'm going to be going to Adepticon.
Okay, when are we meeting? Hello.
Okay. So that'll be like it'll be my first time entering into Golden Demon too. So we'll see how that plays out.
Are you doing sneak peeks on Instagram of where you're going to enter?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, there's something to be said. Like if I'm gonna paint something for a competition, I feel like there's something to be said for like the novelty factor. Like some like when it sometimes has an impact. So like I'm not going like huge, but at the same time, like I'm coming with the intention of like bringing something to like put in the competition. So we'll hope, we'll see how it goes. Like I don't want to come empty handed, so.
I mean, are you going to send us like advanced copy exclusive Tabletop and Beyond sneak peeks? You don't have to, but I'm just saying if you wanted to.
That's possible.
All right. Well, we'll be looking for it for sure. That'll be awesome.
Yeah. That's definitely coming down the line. I'm also just looking to sort of like expand some of my teaching. I'm not going to be teaching at Adepticon, but I'm this is an odd thing to say. I've never taken a mini painting class before or course. So I'm sort of coming to Adepticon with the intention of like taking one of those and sort of like sitting in and sort of like participating from some other artists and kind of like trying to sort of glean like what people are really looking to take away from something like that and that kind of space, so that like when I sort of take the opportunity to kind of put a class together, I'm bringing something that like has some real value to the people that come to it. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm also going to be like doing some more sort of online coaching and teaching too. Have a nice camera set up here, and if others do too, like I've had a couple of like online sessions with people that have like been really successful. So exploring that avenue, there's a couple other things in the pipeline, but nothing solid yet.
Cool. Painting with Josh.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I'd love for you to come down and teach at the Nova Open next time. Like, I'll make time to take your class if you do it. And if you are interested in doing it, I have a direct link to the guy who organizes all the painters for Nova Open.
Okay.
So he can get you in, and I'll say you got to put Josh in. You got to put Josh in. So he's Cutthroat Cure, like I told you, Devin Meyer.
Sure.
So
sure.
He's the one that organizes all the Nova Open painters. So, but yeah, it'd be great to see if you do some of that teaching and if you show up at the Nova Open. So, but yeah, dude, let's stay in touch and link up at Adepticon, because it would be awesome to meet in person, and maybe we can wander the models with you and you can tell us how much everybody's is terrible compared to yours. I'd love to hear that.
I don't know about that, but it could be fun to look at the cases though.
Yeah.
Sure. I'm going to get to actually judge. So Privateer does a painting competition at Adepticon too. Not as like, world renowned, I guess, as Golden Demon, but I'll be judging that competition at Adepticon too.
That'll be cool.
Fun. Yeah,
that's very cool. Very, very good. Well, we look forward to seeing you at Adepticon. If folks are interested in following you and learning more, getting in touch with you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you, get in touch with you, or follow you? I think Instagram's like your normal domicile of social media, right?
Yeah, Instagram, Quarterpaint on Instagram, but there's also like on Instagram there's a link to like my link tree that has like Facebook, my email, YouTube. So Instagram's always a good starting point to connect to all that stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, very good. And you won't be disappointed if you follow him. I love going through my feed and seeing a new picture update from you all the time. I will say that I was starting to get very confused about mid last year about why all these non-orcs were starting to show up in my feed. I was like, wait, what's happening here? Who's taking over Josh's account? So, but it makes more sense now, I suppose.
Sure.
So, well, Josh, thank you for joining us this week. We loved having you on here. We loved looking at your miniatures. This was a lot of fun doing it, visually instead of verbally. Again, for all of our listeners who are listening to this entire episode, go check out the YouTube video or at least Josh's Instagram account because you won't be disappointed. So thank you very much. Thank you so much to all of our supporters. And if you can like and share this video, that'd be wonderful. And have a great evening and keep the dice rolling.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.